There have been several congressional hearings on cyber warfare, but most have concentrated on the technology involved and how we can devise defenses to block hackers from breaking into our government and business computers. The greatest danger to our nation, the greatest dangers, however, are not really about technology. It's the ongoing attacks on our economy by the Chinese, among others. This second form of attack is in the form of commercial warfare. The scale upon which it is being conducted is beyond anything we've experienced and far exceeds traditional espionage. Have we gotten beyond the let's sit down and discuss it phase with other countries, or do we have an action plan that if we discover cyber attacks going on, that there will be some type of retaliation?
Promoting around the world what is called the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime, so that every country has strong laws in this area. They have the capability to actually prosecute those laws, and that there is better international cooperation. We have something.
How many people have been prosecuted in China for cyber?
I'd have to get back to you on that, sir. I don't know.
Can you tell me any country in the world where we've had the prosecutions and what they were composed of?
We've had many prosecutions in the United States.
If we come to the conclusion that a cyber attack, both in terms of a criminal cyber attack and also strategic cyber attacks, are actually being blessed, if not perpetuated, and actually involved in the government of that country.
I think we have to look at all the tools that that we have at our disposal as a national government. But from my perspective, obviously, the tools that we employ are the diplomatic tools, and those tools, I think, are important to make clear to a government that this is a concern.
And what are those tools? I mean, diplomatic tools.
Well, the diplomatic tools are, I think, twofold. One is engaging directly with that government, okay, and saying to them that this conduct is something that we find unacceptable.
Well, I'm sure that will upset them a lot.
Well, but I think you have to look at their overall relationship. With a lot of these countries, we have many different types of relationships: economic relationships, other relationships.
Have we done any of that?
Yes. In fact, if you just recently, the President has made clear in his call with the new President.
What actual sanctions have we put on any country? For example, it's clear that China has been deeply involved in this. Everybody knows it, supposedly. What have we done to say, okay, here's your deadline, and this is exactly what's going to happen?
I'm a member of the NATO Parliamentary Alliance, and on a recent trip from a NATO meeting in Belgium, it did not appear to me that this subject of cyber warfare was a top priority. Can you give me a suggestion as to what the administration is doing to make this a top priority?
You've heard Tom Donilon, the National Security Advisor, talk about the great concern that this poses for us, and said three things. One, we want China to understand the scope and seriousness of this problem, of this activity emanating from China. Two, that we want to make sure that they stop, that they actually take some action to investigate and to stop this activity. And three, that we need a sustained dialogue with the Chinese. And we have some dialogue, but we don't have a sustained dialogue.
Well, I'm sure that...
And the President said that,
I'm sure threatening to have a sustained dialogue is going to really deter these fellows, along with the proclamations of great concern. All I know is that I just asked you a specific question about specific actions, and all I got was a list of words that had been spoken, and I'm sure that words coming out of the mouth of officials of the United States is terribly frightening to the Chinese.
Who is APT-1? Who is this group that we outed in our report? It's important to realize that APT-1, and APT stands for Advanced Persistent Threat. It's a term that was invented by an Air Force colonel in 2006 to tie back to Chinese threat actors. APT-1 is one of 24 groups that our company tracks. APT-1 is the most prolific of these groups in terms of the number of industries that are affected. We estimate is about 20 that we've personally witnessed, including 141 companies, 115 of which are in the United States. But there are other groups that we just did not decide to document in our report. APT-1 is actually Unit 61398. This is a unit of the People's Liberation Army. It's the 2nd Bureau of the 3rd Department, and the 3rd Department in the PLA General Staff does signals intelligence. So it makes sense, you take a signals intelligence unit, you turn them into a computer network operations unit. They operate out of, primarily out of a headquarters outside of Shanghai that was built in 2007, 130,000 square feet. And there's been TV coverage recently where reporters from CNN tried to take some footage. They were chased by soldiers.
Mr. Autry, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Rohrabacher, Mr. Keating, and members. I want to particularly thank Mr. Marino for your strong comments with the earlier panelist. The Mandiant Corporation's brilliant report has made obvious to everyone what we've known all along, and that there's a giant sucking sound in our economy, and it's coming from China. The military origin, the billions of dollars in damages, the infrastructure, and the focus on technology make it clear that this is a 21st century act of war. This is not some petty crime happening by a bunch of internet trolls in China. China controls the internet better than any country on earth. I know that from strong personal experience. I can guarantee you that if they can find my emails to dissidents, they can certainly track down a giant organized cyber attack happening in their own territory. China does not view the U.S. as a valued trading partner and a model for progress. We've got to give up on this naive perception that China is doing everything they can to move forward to become the United States. They're not. They view us as an ideological adversary who they see as weak and foolish and something that needs to be controlled. The internet was developed by the United States government at United States taxpayer expense. We in the United States and in the U.S. military have every right to expect special privileges in the internet, and we need to make sure that it is not debased by either hoodlums or nations who do not appreciate the rule of law. It shouldn't be used by tyrants to repress their citizens, and we shouldn't allow those same tyrants to attack our corporations and our infrastructure. The Chinese government can't think of enough things to do with the money that they have been earning from the economic warfare that they've been executing against the United States. While we are frustrated over a 2% cut, the Chinese are launching moon missions, building maglev trains, launching the biggest military buildup that we've seen since the 1930s. Meanwhile, these cyber attacks against the United States are in the same financial class as the 9/11 attacks. They're costing clearly billions and I believe hundreds of billions of dollars. And this translates to real effect on American individual workers, and this results in loss of life to Americans as well. And so I ask, why does China get a pass on this scurrilous behavior and every other form of scurrilous behavior that they engage in, from economic abuse to human rights? I believe that if Unit 61398 were a segment of the Iranian Republican Guard located in Tehran, that building would be a smoldering pile of rubble before I got a chance to testify. Yet there seems to be something going on with China. And I think that the problem is, frankly, that a lot of American corporations are co-opted by the Chinese regime. They have such a huge interest in the production capabilities and the ability to exploit Chinese labor in the Chinese environment to lower their cost. And they are chasing the delusional promise of this giant market that they're someday actually going to be given access to, that they don't dare offend their Chinese host. They're like the abused partner in a abusive spousal relationship. They're not going to call the cops on the Chinese, and they're really not going to do it when they know that the cops don't show up and that the cops don't have any guns, which is the situation that we're in now. This is not a technical challenge, it's a military one. No amount of locks or alarms could protect your home if there was no belief that the police would show up or that the prosecutors would do anything. If you had burglars working in broad daylight against whatever security you'd put in place. We need to do some serious actions, and I strongly recommend, first of all, that we have a tariff on Chinese technology that accounts for our governmental cost in cybersecurity to defend against the Chinese, and for the damages that we estimate against our corporations until there are no further signs of this sort of activity. We should have a ban on the import of any Chinese networking hardware, and specifically I mean Huawei. We need to stop the revolving door at the State, Treasury, and Commerce departments, where officials from those departments come directly from doing business with China or look forward to doing business with the Chinese as soon as they get out of government service. Finally, we need to stop educating our adversary. Our computer science departments and engineering departments are full of mainland Chinese students, the majority of whom return to mainland China. Why are we educating the students of a country who are using that technology that we're handing them to oppose our interest?
And if you're dealing with bullies and gangsters, there's got to be some form of retaliation. And we need to know, we have not had any examples of what we can actually do, except Mr. Autry, I think, explained something about we can determine what the price tag is and maybe put a tariff on goods coming in from China or other countries.
As we heard, the PLA is playing a very direct role, both in the commercial espionage as well as the more traditional military activities, and a military response is needed. We need to consider whether or not that needs to be purely cyber in the future or not, and what options we'll have in the event of conflict to put a stop to cyber activities emanating from China.
Mr. Autry?
It's not our burden of responsibility to prove exactly what the damages is, but it's our responsibility to stop this hostile and overt action by the Chinese military against the United States of America.